minute. Welcome everybody, and thank you very much for coming to this final concurrent session of the Forum for Excellence through the Equity Lens, our 2021 version. My name is Sarah Goldammer. I'm part of the Forum for Excellence Planning Committee. I'm from your Adult Education Professional Development Network. I'm here with the fabulous moderator, Anita Kerr, who's a colleague as part of the Professional Development Network, and she's going to be providing tech support for us. So just a couple of housekeeping items. Probably you don't need them by this point because everybody's been to sessions. But before we get started with our presenters, I want you to know that everybody is in mute and you came in that way. That doesn't mean we want you to ask questions. So you can unmute later or put things in the chat. And Angela's going to ask you to do that in a minute. But we also have been doing Zoom long enough to know that it's chaotic if we have background noise. So when you're not talking, please make sure that you're in mute, and then also make sure to put the chat in the Zoom chat here, not in the Whova chat. And you will be able to access today's presentation on the Whova app. It's going to be recorded, and it will be on the Forum for Excellence website following the conference. Give us about a week to get that up. Also, if you're looking for a certificate of professional development, those will come in about 2 weeks after the conference. If you need a certificate of professional development, your name needs to be in your Whova name right now. So if it's a nickname or something, please change it to be your first and last name. That's our announcements. We want to thank ICCB for sponsoring the Forum for Excellence. This is sharing the load with core partners building ICAPS IETs. And we thank, and I already introduced ourselves, we thank Angela Gerberding from ICCB and all of her panelists. And at this point, I think I'll turn it over to Angela and let you go through the introductions.
Sure. Thank you everyone for coming in at noon on a Friday where you could be eating lunch. And for all we know, you are still eating lunch. I finished mine about 5 minutes ago. That's the nice thing about Zoom conference. Sarah, can you put the screen back up, or am I just not seeing it? Oh, there you go. Thanks. Sorry. So this is a session that we are in, is sharing the load with core partners to build ICAPS and IETs. I know over the last couple of years, there's been discussion about braided funding and using other sources of funding to get students in and helping support run ICAPS, because we know running ICAPS and IETs can be expensive. And so we wanted to get some people together that are using some different kind of partners and have them be able to answer some questions that you have. So as questions pop into your head, as Sarah said, you can unmute yourself or type them into chat and we can call on you, or if we need explanation, we can do that. This really is a panel discussion. That's the goal of this, is for you to be able to get answers to questions that you have, either about building a program, running a program, continuing a program, scaling a program. What is it that you need done? So I am Angela Gerberding. I'm with Illinois Community College Board. I am the Associate Director for Integrated Career Programs. And the two groups of panelists that we have are representatives, from Elgin Community College and Rend Lake College. On the next screen, we'll have their names, their emails, but I will let them go through and introduce themselves. So if you can go to the next slide, then I think it was Elizabeth. Oh, good. My memory is working today. Elizabeth, can you introduce yourself and your partners?
Sure. And did we decide that you did want me to give a little introduction about?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Okay. So my name is Elizabeth Hobson. I'm the Dean of Adult Education at Elgin Community College. And I'm going to introduce my partner in a minute, but first I'm going to give you a little bit of background about why we were invited to this panel. And it was because Angela was looking for folks that were collaborating with other titles. So Elgin Community College was awarded a 5-year U.S. Department of Education Title III grant to scale up ICAPS and to expand the available pathways. And the reason that this was what the deliverable was because this grant was, we applied with an initiative that was successful, but was only impacting a small group of students at the institution. And so that's the name of the grant is actually called Strengthening Institutions. So some of the things we've been able to do without getting super specific with this grant we were able to share the model of ICAPS throughout the college. We were able to get folks on board from all different divisions, CTE, which of course Kathy's going to speak about more, health professions, but also admissions, advising, registration, and basically, any department that you could imagine that would touch ICAPS in any way, shape, or form, we were able to meet together and get them on board. We were able to promote understanding of ICAPS, gain these different divisions cooperation, and this also allowed other departments to be able to inform students about ICAPS. Through this process, it allowed us to talk about ICAPS as a we instead of an us and a them. Previous to this had always been your program. ICAPS is your program, adult ed. But this allowed us now to really talk about it as us and we, and this whole idea of, we are working together for the students. And so that came about mainly due to this Title III grant. We also developed a block schedule for students that was consistent over both semesters for 2 semesters if it's a 2-semester program, and we simplified registration. We had scenarios prior to this wherein it would be impossible for a student to complete the certificate in the 1 or 2 semesters that it was stated to be completable in because the courses overlapped. One couldn't make it, it wasn't possible. So again, in working together, this grant was the impetus for us to work together in a more cohesive fashion. And we also hired 2 student support specialists. And one of them works primarily in health professions, and the other works primarily in CTE. And so they provide personal support, case management, and coordinate with CTE, as well as conduct workplace readiness workshops. And that is my segue to introduce Kathy Taylor. I'll let her further introduce herself because she's going to talk a little bit more about the student support specialist who works in CTE and the fantastic student success, that we've been seeing with ICAPS in this partnership. Take it away, Kathy.
Thank you, Elizabeth. As Elizabeth said, my name is Kathy Taylor. I am the Dean of the Sustainability Business and Career Technologies Division at Elgin Community College. And the best way to describe our division, it is comprised primarily of most all of our career tech education programs, with the exception of health professions. So as Elizabeth said, we work very closely with her division in making sure that there are sections set aside and exclusively dedicated to our ICAPS students. I was still an associate dean when this program was really rolling out in the initial stages. And so it's really good to see how it has progressed over the past several years. And also it's really exciting to see how many of our students have actually gone through the program, completed the program, but then also made a decision to come back and pursue the AAS degree. And then even furthermore than that, the number of students who are now employed in our local industry. And so that's the part of it that really gets us excited about this. The student support specialist who works in our division, she is very knowledgeable of all of our manufacturing programs, which is primarily the programs that are assigned for, or aligned, I should say, with ICAPS. And so she works very closely with not only the faculty, but also the support faculty to make sure that we have all of the wraparound services that we need. If I can just share a story, during the pandemic, when we had to go off campus and go to remote, she was very much available to all of our ICAPS students to really, really coach them through this entire process. Because if you think about it, not only was it just the ICAPS students, but there were several students, many students that I think we all have identified who just didn't have the technology to continue. And so if you add that layer on to the ICAPS model as well, now you're talking about students who need technology, students who need extra support, students who need a quiet place to study. And so Andrea, who is our student support specialist, she and I were in constant contact, and we were always trying to figure out how do we provide these services through the college to ensure that those students who are enrolled in our ICAPS program were able to succeed and also complete their certificate. And so if I can just talk a little bit about the success metrics that we have. So we have ICAPS pathways set aside in our EMTB program. Right now we have a total of 24 students who have enrolled. 17 of those have completed. We also have ICAPS pathways in CNC, welding, also in HVAC and in industrial maintenance. And so the numbers here are really, really impressive. If I go to CNC, 73% of those students have completed the program out of those who enrolled. If I go to the welding program, out of those who enrolled, 43% have completed, but 75% of those who completed are now employed in our local industry or local economy. In the IST or industrial maintenance program, 64% of those who enrolled completed the program. 99% of those who completed are now enrolled, are working in industry. And then last but not least, 74% of those who enrolled in the HVAC program are now, or did complete, 39% of those who completed are enrolled in the field. So this is an example of what we have been able to achieve in our program. And like I said earlier, we are very, very proud of the successes that we have had, and we look forward to continuing this program into the future.
Thank you, Elgin Community College. So there's some background information. On to our Rend Lake team. Christina, I'll start with you and then let you introduce your group as you wish.
Hi, I'm Christina Manchin. Some of you remember as Hutchison. I got married over the summer, so I've inherited a new name. So I don't have huge numbers to tout to you. We do still sometimes struggle to get students enrolled into our certificate programs, which we will talk about a little bit later about some new approaches we're going to take as a team here. But I've been around, we started ICAPS we've been doing about 7 years. So I've been here longer than my cohorts of Lee from our Mantricon office and Gabby. So it was before I understood what the state approved list was. So thank goodness we have come a long ways. I now understand how to get our programs to go through our Title I partners. I understand the importance of having the CTE partners on us to help us with the CTE instructors. So it's been a process, and I'm glad to say now that we do have all these pieces in place. I know Gabby was instrumental this past year during COVID when we were taking our welding program remote. My adult ed teacher had to have access to the Canvas, and Gabby, that's something Gabby has been able to help us with. Lee, I'm going to let them tell you their story and how they became involved here in a minute, but Lee has already been to our facility and our classrooms, gosh, several times this year to meet with students. She's brought her new staff around to meet us and to meet students. So, they're more than willing to come and help us in any way, because I think together we all want the same thing. We want to see the success of students. So I'm going to ask Gabby, do you have, you want to tell them a little bit more about you and what you're doing in your CTE role?
Good afternoon. I'm Gabrielle Farner, so I'm the Dean of Applied Science and Advanced Tech at Rend Lake. I've been at Rend Lake almost 4 years. And it has been, I pretty much have all the CT programs too, with the exception of the allied health programs. And it has been, Christina's, the past year is really where I've become more involved with adult ed. And it's really nice because now I know, I will say in the past when we've had some involvement with it, just been kind of like, oh, here's some funding that we could possibly get, but we got to tie a program to it, and then so our instructors would be like, well, here you go. We just got to do this to make it work. So it has been nice, the partnership that we've worked with in the past year. I think that everybody has benefited for it, obviously. We have a student success really in our welding program right now. And she also started as a certificate student and is actually going on to her AAS now. And I think it's really enhanced the partnerships. It's actually encouraged, we all know, with CT, a lot of times instructors don't like to, get involved with the gen ed side and things like that. But it has actually involved our instructors to form more partnerships with the adult ed instructors, and also working with the gen ed instructors just to see these students through. So we look forward to a great relationship and really expanding all of our programs, which I know Christina will talk a little bit more, and we will as we move forward. So thank you.
Lee, you want to tell us how you came to be with us?
Sure. I am Lee Dunny. I am the WIOA program manager with Mantricon. That is LWIA 25. So my office is located in Marion. We are about 45 minutes from the Rend Lake College campus, but we are happy to make that trek. I've been up there, I think 3 times in the last couple of weeks. I am relatively new to my role as program manager here. I've been in this role for less than a year. Previously, I was involved in adult and dislocated worker programs, so I didn't have a lot of contact with the adult ed departments at our community college, but excited to be in this expanded role and getting involved with them. We have our career specialist trying to actively be in those GED classes, and we try to support our students. Most of those students are WIOA eligible, so we are able to provide support while they are in GED, which we can talk specifics about what we support at that point, and then also as they continue on to the ICAPS program, and also trying to support some work experience that they can gain while they are learning and in that ICAPS. So thank you for the invite.
Thank you, ladies. I'm glad you guys you're all able to be with us today. So now, Sarah, you can take the slides down. Thanks. If no, I haven't seen any questions pop up in the chat yet, but have no fear. We have a stash of questions that we're ready to ask if we need to, because we're adult ed people and we come prepared. So, and I'm sure the CTE people are prepared as well. So how long, I'm going to start with Elgin, since Rend Lake just got done talking. This time I'm going to start with Elgin, but don't worry, Christina, you get to go first next time. So how long have you, so Elizabeth, you said this was part of a grant, which is how you got started with your Title III collaboration. So what is the collaboration in terms of who can provide what, who supports how? Is it just, and I'm not familiar enough with the grant myself to be able to ask, to word this question exactly aligned with the grant. But how does this kind of break down? How does it work that you're able to work with your Title III partner with this?
Sure. So as you reiterated, and I said it in my introduction, that we were in the fall of 2016, we were awarded a 5-year grant from the U.S. Department of Education, which is Title III. And the idea of the grant was to select something you were doing at your college that was successful and scale it up. So this has allowed us to serve a much greater number of students. And we also added a pathway that was part of the deliverables in the grant, adding a pathway every single year. So when we started this, I guess I could do the math and really think about it, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to jump in and say, we didn't have 9 pathways then, but we have 9 pathways now. So upon adding one every year, Kathy has already mentioned the ones that we have that fall into her area. And then in addition to those, the ones we have in the health professions are basic nurse assistant, dental office aide, and phlebotomy, and sterile processing and distribution. So in addition to the ones Kathy's already mentioned in manufacturing and construction, we also have these, and oh, Kathy also mentioned the EMTB, which is falls in Kathy's area as well. So the way it works is that Title III right now pays the support faculty. Those are the adult ed faculty who are supporting the students. So it pays for their salaries. It pays for the amount of time where they are the team teaching or auditing piece. So it pays their stipend for that. If there's other kinds of meetings or anything like that, where faculty, whether it's CTE faculty, adjuncts, or whether it's the adult ed adjuncts, where it's deemed appropriate to pay them, they will be paid out of the Title III. We pay out of Title III also when the support staff are developing curriculum to go along with whatever their particular pathway is. That is paid for out of Title III. And student books have been paid for out of Title III. And the student support specialists, which Kathy mentioned one of them, and then we have another one who oversees all the health professions and works with all of those students. The Title III grant also pays for those two student support specialists for their salaries. So as this grant will be coming to an end next fall, we are starting conversations about how to maintain this, because that is part of what the grant is okay, we had to scale this up to benefit more. And now what we, now one of the deliverables is figuring out how are you going to continue with what you have now. So we have some meetings or some conversations happening, and some meetings will be happening to allow us to talk about what different things, for example, Perkins can pay for the books. Will adult ed be able to then pay for the support staff, or excuse me, the support faculty for their salaries for teaching the support courses? But then there's other things that cannot be paid for out of the adult ed grant nor the Perkins grant. So those are pieces that we're going to need for the college to help get on board and help pay for. So, that's kind of what the next step is. We've had all this great success, but now we have to figure out how can we maintain it when we no longer have access to this grant.
Sure. Thank you. And that actually leads to a point I wanted to make about today. I know there's probably people listening that don't have a Title III partnership already in place, or they don't already have a Title I partnership already in place. And this isn't necessarily my goal for this was to hopefully introduce these ideas as possibilities, something to explore. So it doesn't mean that you have to go back to your college on Monday and say, we have to partner with our Title III. ICCB said Title III must be, that is not what I'm saying. But it is something you might want to explore if it's an option somehow. The same thing with Title I. There are possibilities of ways out there. So hopefully those of you in the audience are hearing something that you can stick in your brain, write down on a notebook, something that when you get back into the office on Monday, then you can go, I think I need to talk to X person about this. I need to explore this more with that person. You may hit a roadblock. That's okay. But hopefully these are going to give you some ideas. So,
well, and two things, Angela, that I would point out that are very, very much relevant to what you just said is two of these things could be done anywhere without any additional funds. It just takes the initiative and the legwork. And that is if you don't already have the block scheduling in your CTE classes, to work with your CTE dean and faculty and get that block scheduling set up. That doesn't take any funds. It just takes initiative and cooperation, of course, between the groups, which is, I'm very fortunate at Elgin. Kathy is wonderful. Kathy's staff are wonderful. We do have a very good relationship, so we are very fortunate. But that is something that can be done without any extra funding. And also trying to share with folks this idea of it's we together. That doesn't take any money either. Getting your other departments and divisions on board to help you and, sharing this idea of these are all our students. These are all students who attend Elgin Community College who are seeking, you know, a certificate in CNC. So how can we all work together to support them? So I think that your point is very well taken, because those are pieces that, yes, we did them through the grant, but we could have had the wherewithal to do it without the grant. But it was the impetus. But again, one could have done it without that. And there may very well be other community colleges or organizations out there that have done it without any kind of Title III funding.
Sure. Thanks. Okay, Christina. So can you elaborate some on how Title I has helped stretch your dollar a little further?
Oh, absolutely. We're fortunate because our Title I, well, the executive director there of Mantricon used to be in adult education. So she knew the background of where we were at. And so she was all on board to help. So, you know, there are things that they come in, and I'm going to let Lee go through a lot of the list, but like I said before, when I first started my very first ICAPS program, Accelerating Opportunities, we were under that funding source then. I didn't really know that I was supposed to have my course or my, this was supposed to be on the state approved list. So they were able to rescue me, get it on there while we still had students. The college worked with me to withhold that tuition until we got everything approved, and then they were able to come back and help. So tuition is something that they do cover. They cover the tuition for any classes that we have that are on the state approved list, which now that I know all about it, I make sure to work with them to get it on that list before we move forward with offering it. But Lee, why don't you tell them about some of the things you do both for GED and with our ICAPS programs?
Sure. So yeah, tuition, of course, is a big chunk for when they move into the ICAPS. Many of those students that are coming through adult ed are WIOA eligible, so we can cover that. But I think the supportive services are really valuable to student success that we can provide. So we help with transportation. We do that typically in the form of gas allowance that we provide on a gas card on a weekly basis to those that we have, co-enrolled with adult ed. With people who are of youth age to be in the WIOA youth program, which are typically people who are under 25. We pay them incentives to go to class. So they get an incentive that amounts to $10 a day when an instructor signs off on the fact that they were there, they were punctual, they participated in class, and they were attentive. Those are the measures that we ask an instructor to sign off on, and then they get that bonus paid to them. And then we can offer incentives to those youth that include paying for the GED test. There are other sources sometimes to get that paid for, but that is one thing that we can do for them. And then we pay them a bonus when they pass a practice test or they get that likely to pass score. When they pass a section of the GED, they get $100 when they finish the GED. So some financial incentives that help stabilize them a little bit while they are pursuing the GED. Unfortunately, we can't pay those types of incentives in our adult program with WIOA, but we can still provide other support like gas and paying the fee for their GED tests to them with the hope that they move on to ICAPS and we can pay for tuition. And if it's something that's on our statewide list, if they move beyond ICAPS and seek that AAS, we can continue to pay tuition, fees, books, and even equipment that they need. So for example, in an allied health program, when you get to the stage where you're doing clinicals, you need scrubs, we can purchase those for them. So anything required for them to complete the program as far as a supply or a tool or a welding hood, those kinds of things we can purchase through our other supportive services with WIOA.
So a question just popped into my head for you, Lee.
Yes.
I've only been doing this on the state side for about a year and a half, 2 years. And a question that comes up to me, which I don't have the answer to, is are those allowable expenses based on your region, the WIOA region you cover, or are those statewide allowable expenses? Because I get questions like that and I go, I'm not familiar enough with WIOA to be able to answer that question. So
Sure.
what is your take on that, Lee?
So we, any of our workforce areas in the state have the ability to write local supportive service policies. And so the things that we cover are outlined in our supportive service policy. Our policy, of course, just like yours in other areas, can't go against anything in a state policy or in a Department of Labor policy. But we do have some leeway, and there are workforce areas that handle things very differently than we do. We just switched from a model where, as an example of something we changed on a local level, we just switched from a model where we paid for people in training. We actually reimbursed mileage at the federal mileage rate, and we switched to a gas allowance that just applies to everyone across the board this year, that we give in the form of a gas card. So that is something that we changed. We changed that for a couple of reasons. The number one reason being that if we tied the transportation assistance we were giving to miles driven, then we had to document miles driven for the Department of Labor. And that involved making our students take forms to their instructors to sign off on that they had been to class. I've felt a long time like that's very demeaning, and singles are folks that are eligible out. So we wanted to get away from that. But so, yes, a lot of that can be decided at the local level and changed at the local level.
So if there's a program listening that says, well, I've talked to my Title I person and they say they can't do this, it doesn't mean that they can never do it. It
That's
may
true.
mean that there needs to be a conversation and maybe prioritize what is the most going to be, sorry, there's my dog getting in on this. What is going to be the most useful use of funds from a Title I partner, and
Absolutely.
see if they can do something from their end.
And just like I'm sure with adult ed, the level of funding we receive fluctuates from year to year and fluctuates from workforce area to workforce area. So it may be that you have a Title I partner that just doesn't have the resources to provide the kind of support that we do. There may come a year where we can't provide that support. We hope not, but that funding, our funding fluctuates, and we have to set those priorities.
Okay, so there was a question that popped into the chat that I do not have the answer to, but perhaps you do, Lee. I don't know why I try to put an A on the end of your name. Is there a list or resource that programs can access that shows LWIBs who support ICAPS, specifically tuition and books? This particular program is trying to partner with their local WIOA partner who has a local policy that students must have an HSE first, not concurrently. Thoughts?
I don't know that there's a local.
And let me just say, I know that you are not the speaker of all Title I's across the state. I'm not putting you in that spot.
No, I could probably shed a little light on why they might have that policy. Once we put someone into ICAPS, then they are in a credential measure that on our performance side. And so finishing that first credential that they're trying to attain of that high school equivalency may be an indicator that WIOA partner is using to predict their suitability to enter the ICAPS program and finish it. So while they are designed to run concurrently, I could see a WIOA partner getting to the point of saying, nope, we have to see them finish something first before they move on. So that may be why. I can't speak for another WIOA partner, but I don't know that there would be any kind of a list. I think it's just everybody has their own local policy. Some of those policies are online for a lot of the WIOA partners. So you may just look and see if they have a website that lists all of their local supportive service policies.
And I'll speak up and say that, there's a lot of times that for Lee and her career specialist, our students need to be in class for a certain amount of time before they want to come and pick them up. In adult ed, we believe every story, they're all going to be successful but that's not their measure. So we have to accept that they need them to be there for X number of hours before we'll be able to pick them up and enroll them into one of these services. So that is a policy that, that we have, become to accept. Our student services coordinator and Lee or one of the student specialists talk on a regular basis, probably several times a week. And they, because we have consent sign that we can speak about the students, we can share that attendance with them. We can let them know what's going on. Hey, they've really been coming, but their grandma really did pass away, or they're home taking care. So sometimes there's that extenuating circumstances that, yeah, they've had to miss class, but here's why. So, then they're aware, and then they're still able to come in and help fund and support that student, because without that funding, they may not be successful. And yeah, I was surprised too. I thought everybody did what they did. So when I talked to some of my other partners and adult ed across the state, they were like, oh, they don't do that. So, I am grateful that we have this, because it is become a tool. We would probably not be able to offer ICAPS, even though we have them all apply for ability to benefit. We are an ability to benefit college. Sometimes that process gets hung up and stuff, so that we always know that we have this as a backup for those eligible students.
Good, thanks. Christina, does Gabby have anything she wants to contribute on this other partner collaboration, how they support, fill in?
Obviously on our end, pay wise, we pay the instructors of our program, so that's not in anything through Christina's grant or WIOA or anything funding like that. So we take care of all of that. And as I kind of said at the first, it's just the fact that, especially like Christina's talking during COVID, our instructors were comfortable working with her adult ed instructors. And I look at this student now and think, I was pulling transcripts and I was looking, and the student has been in Rend Lake since fall of 2000. So we're talking now fall of 21, and the student is finally enrolled into an AAS program. And I would like to think a lot of that has got to do with the support that she's received in the past year, because she realized in baby steps she was able to complete that certificate, because now not only does she have the support of Christina's crew, but she also has the support of a workforce partner with Lee there. And then she also has the support of knowing that, our welding instructors are going to be there to support her through the rest of her welding AAS. So I'd like to think that the three of us together have kind of put Rend Lake in a really good light to her, to say, okay, I can move forward now to the gen ed side because these support things are in place. I think the partnership has been probably the greatest asset that's come out of this. Obviously the student success, but her success was on those partnerships that everybody just kind of put their guards down and wasn't like, this is my division, I'll run it. I don't want your instructors, meddling in our Canvas classes or, in our classes and, kind of evaluating. And I don't think our instructors ever felt that like Christina's people were like going to go back and report, hey, they're not doing this right or something like that. And another partner we don't have on here too, which we utilize, is the CTE Success Center, which is pretty new to Rend Lake College also. So I know our instructors, and I believe Christina's has too, has taken the student to and partnered with the Success Center too. So if she struggles in math and blueprint and things like that, we've just kind of surrounded her with the resources and let her know what's there for that. So
I'll elaborate a little bit on the Success Center. That is just a tutoring room for any CTE course. Doesn't matter what aspect. If it is in blueprint reading and that they're just at a stuck point, our adult ed students are just as welcome to go in there as your traditional students. So it doesn't mean you're signing up for lifelong help. It means they can go into the Success Center either at the recommendation of the adult ed or the recommendation of the CTE instructor. or the student's own accord. So just another piece of the college that we're integrated with.
Okay, thank you. So if anybody's got any questions, I mean, we've answered a couple of questions out of the chat. You can keep adding questions to the chat as you want. So what is, and I'm going to ask a question that I didn't prep you ladies with, sorry. So if there was one thing that you have learned that you did not know walking into this partnership, that you could tell somebody, make sure you do this, make sure you check with this person, make sure you ask, whatever it is. So what is that, or those, what's a couple, one or two of those things that you're like, this would have gone so much better? Like Elizabeth, you started this 5 years ago. If we had only known this 5 years ago, we could have fixed it before it got to year 3 and we went, oh, that's a problem. So Christine, I'm going to start with you this time. What are a couple of those nuggets that you could share with the program that's thinking about something like this?
I think the flexibility, I think because combining all the programs, you have to be able to adjust your own. I mean, when we started out, I remember the Title I saying, well, we need original copies of the tape. I mean, because that was tape 9 and 10, and it was the pen paper. And we're like, well, you can't have our original copies of 9 and of the tape. We have to have those. So, you know, it was just kind of that, okay, we kind of an agreement on who got the copy and who got the original, but that flexibility. And I mean, especially during COVID, I mean, we had our plan set up for adult ed and when our support class was going to be and all this, and even though it was all going to be virtual, but you still had to be flexible, not only for your partners, but that student. She was working 2 jobs and taking classes. And so she couldn't always keep her support class. So you have to learn to be that flexible for, okay, I can, you know, thank God my adult ed instructor was willing to adjust that, because he would text her, he would email her, he would get on Canvas and see what her assignments were, talk to the, you know, CTE instructor and say, okay, this is what she's struggling with, so that he could focus that little amount of time he might have got with her. So, you know, if you checked her attendance, let's see, I see Kathy's on here, so don't check my attendance. But for her support class, it was probably minimal, but she succeeded and she's enrolled again this semester. So I think that knowing that you have to make adaptations for every piece of that, don't get so rigid and stuck in but this is my policy and this is how I have to do it.
Okay, Elizabeth, Kathy. Kathy's been kind of quiet, but I'll listen to either one of you.
Yeah, do you want to go first, Kathy?
I actually, that last part that Christina said about not being so rigid and stuck in our ways, because I mean, let's just unpack that for a little bit, because I think overall in higher ed, we tend to get stuck with something that we thought was always working in the past, but in reality, if the past year hasn't shown it, we know that there are gaps in some of the things that we put in place in the past. So I totally agree with Christina about the rigidity of looking at how can we build support around this for our students to ensure that they are successful. And at the end of the day, I mean, that's what we're all trying to do, right? Is to provide them with the education that they need in order to go out into the community and be successful in employment and whatnot. The other thing that I would add to your original question is just making sure, and Elizabeth will sign on to this as well, but making sure there is a solid line of communication between the partner divisions. And we've had a couple of missteps in ours, and I'm just being very transparent and honest. We've had a couple of missteps in ours where, we in our division, we knew what the ICAPS seats were, if you will, or the sections were, the classes, but Elizabeth's division didn't know. And it's like, whoops, we kind of need to let them know, right? And then just this past week, I've discovered that when our faculty are making changes to curriculum, and especially if that curriculum falls in an ICAPS pathway, we need to let the ICAPS support instructor know, because he or she then will have to adjust their curriculum delivery. So these are some things that we're learning as we go along. But as Elizabeth said earlier, fortunately, we are in a position where, you know, when we recognize there's a misstep, we all just come together and try to fix the problem. We just focus on fixing the problem. It's not about the blame, it's about fixing the problem. But I totally agree with Christina, as I said earlier, about the flexibility that has to be built into this, because not every student is going to come to us with the same issue, with the same problem. And so therefore we cannot just, like, you know, do a cookie cutter model and try to address everybody, because everything is not for everyone.
I would totally have to agree with everything that Christina and Kathy have said. They really have summed it up well. The different perspectives of looking at things, and you know, how things run one way, how things run another, what your expectation was. Did that come to fruition? Did it not? And combining that with communication. And like Kathy said, we are so fortunate to be working with a group that everybody is just willing to say, oh, hey, that was my bad. I'll make sure to get it where it needs, or I didn't know that, but I will make sure that I get the, you know, do it the way that it needs to be done for your staff next time. Or, you know, because on all sides, we have these little mini fails and have to make sure that we, and that goes back to the, not only the communication, but the perspectives. So we also, like in adult ed, for example, have to be understanding of the way that the office managers or office assistants in the CTE department need something done. So we need to make sure we're providing information, you know, to them and so forth. And just there's so many different perspectives in this whole thing that going back to that communication is absolutely key. And just the understanding that we are all working together and that there's more than one way to do things. And, you know, just how important that is. I think one of the other realities as well that we have to understand is that sometimes it takes a while for folks to see the successes of adult ed students. So sometimes in these programs, somebody might be hesitant to have adult ed students in their programs, but a few years down the line, we have a perfect example in one of our areas. That person is one of the biggest advocates now for ICAPS, even though at the beginning, he was very worried about them being in his courses. But now he's one of the biggest advocates because he's seen that the program works and that, you know, students are students. So, but I think at the same time as I say that, I also need to say that we also need to remember and understand that they are students. They are people. And sometimes they do bring unique challenges into these programs. And we also have to be cognizant of that. But again, it all boils back down to perspectives and communication.
And I want to address the comment that you put in the chat, fairly long, but absolutely, there are lots of places. These are two programs that collaboration and communication is clearly not an issue. They talk, they share information, they're back at, you know, and just like Kathy said, something may get dropped here or there, but that happens in every situation. But if some of you sitting in the audience are like, I have tried having a conversation with the other side, whoever the other side is, and you're struggling with that, reach out to me, because being at ICCB, I can grab a hold of the CTE people by the ear, or I can grab a hold of the adult ed people by the ear. I can go either direction and say, let's have a conversation at a table, because it may come down to just like what Christina and Lee were talking about, that, oh, I didn't know you had to do it that way. Well, I didn't know you had to do it that way. How does this work? So sometimes it takes that outside person to have that conversation happen. You can also tell that we have two deans on this discussion. Sometimes getting the higher level people involved, because I'm sure, just as Elizabeth mentioned, there was an instructor that initially was probably hesitant, is probably a good word to use, about being part of this. He may have, been persuaded and now can see the benefits to it. And so having those higher level people involved in the conversation and supporting it, not necessarily my level higher, but dean level higher on all of the sides, is usually beneficial and helpful, especially in the explaining what the other side needs to know about what your side needs. Just like Christina said, we have to have the paper copy. And Lee was like, nope, we have to have a paper copy. Okay, there's only one paper copy. We have to figure out how to make this happen. So, anything else anybody would like to add?
Yeah, I would just add one other thing, Angela. You talked about getting the buy-in from the academic deans, but also making sure that, your admissions, your enrollment, your financial aid folks, all of those people, I believe sincerely, have to be brought to the table at the very beginning of this discussion, not after you put the plan in place and then roll it out to them, because they're always going to look for, well, you can't do it this way. But if they were at the beginning of the conversation, everybody understands what the expectations are.
Excellent point. Excellent. Because none of us like to be brought in at the end on anything. I mean, your college applies for a grant and, oh yeah, by the way, CTE has to run it. Wait, hold on. We didn't do it. What are you talking about? Nobody likes being in that position. So, bring people in from the beginning, help them understand, help them see. So I put my email in the chat if anybody needs that. I didn't see any other questions come up. Sarah, can you put my last slide? I didn't have a lot of slides because this really was discussion. I was like, I don't need slides. One more. I'd like to thank everybody I would like to thank all of Michelle, I see your hand, so I'll get to you. I would like to thank all the panelists that have been here, all of you for coming and listening. Again, as I said before, hopefully you can take something back to your program and implement it. Michelle, let me ask you your question before I get into the rest of the slide.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. I just have a quick question for the panelists. We at JJC are so fortunate that we have a great partnership and our deans all the way, even admissions and counselors, everything. But where we're struggling a little bit is with our WIOA partner. And so I was wondering if Lee or anybody from a partnership like that would ever be willing to, I don't want to say write a letter of recommendation, but just a testimony as to why their partnership works and what the advantages are of participating in an ICAPS would be. And again, everybody's program is a little bit different, but maybe these letters of support would help us. We're meeting with our WIOA partner. They have a new director. After 20 years, the former director has retired. And I just feel like, this is a good transition time to, do the ask one more time. You can't give up. But if we had some letters of maybe not support for Will County, but just in general of the benefits of participating in an ICAPS and supporting those students and those partnerships, that might speak volumes coming from a person on the DECO or the WIOA side of the house.
So yeah, I think that's a great idea, Michelle. I can't speak for your WIOA partners, but I can certainly talk with my program director, who was most recently the president of the IWP and is probably familiar with your new person, and maybe send you an email.
Thank you. That'd be great. Thank you.
And this is probably a dumb question, but Michelle, Christina, do you two know each other? Can you share emails with Lee if needed?
This is my first time meeting Lee, but I will put my email in the chat. Thank you.
Or if you need Christina, if you need an email or something, let me know. I've got Michelle's email,
Okay. Okay.
but it's in the chat right there too. Michelle's at Joliet,
Okay.
if that
I
helps.
just- Sometimes the regional plans, if you looked at any of your regional or local WIOA plans, sometimes they'll put things in there. I mean, I use my regional plan all the time for grant writing and all that kind of stuff. But sometimes you might find a tidbit in there that somebody said, oh, we're going to support adult ed, or this is how we're working together. So it would kind of be a little backdoor. It's like, oh, look, you said in your original plan, this is what you were going to do. Show me how that's going to work in life. I mean, I don't have to do that, but that might work because it is required to be in that regional plan. And
Yeah, that's
most
a
of the
great
time-
suggestion, Christina.
And I did,
Yeah.
I have pulled the regional plan, and I want to say alluded to it when I was setting up this meeting, but I also want to come at it with a lot of sugar and honey first.
Yes. Well, even at
Yeah.
that, like we talked about reframing the question, it's like, oh, can you explain to me how this was going to work? And
Right,
we
right.
want to help you meet this goal.
That's awesome, right.
Okay, good. See, so success on today's panel. We've already got somebody that we're working with. Great. Anybody else has questions, feel free to reach out. If you have questions in general about ICAPS, Model 1, Model 2, what are they? How do I get them approved? What does this look like? What does this mean? You can reach out to Sarah, who's on this call, Tara Schwab. They're both at Southern Illinois Professional Development Center, and myself. So there's our emails. Something new that we are starting this fall, I had to think a minute about what season we're in, which is kind of scary, is we're going to be doing an ICAPS office hours. It's going to be every other Thursday, starting next Thursday, the 30th. We wanted to start it after the forum, and we're going to do it from 11 to noon. Sarah, help me out. Is there a link already available? Do they have to register? And this is going to be virtual. So it's going to be something that once you've got the link, you can jump in if you have a question. You can be on for 5 or 10 minutes, get your answer, and leave. It's not like a big discussion. It really is come in and ask questions.
Yeah, so Angela, it's not a registration, but there is a Zoom link and it has been sent out, and I would normally go get that and stick it in the chat. But as some of you know, I have only, like, my laptop went down. So I'm literally limping across the finish line in technology for the forum. So but I will put my email address. So if anybody wants to email me, I can just send that to you. But yes, there's been a couple of announcements that have gone out about it, but but send me an email if you want more information, because I know that one off the top of my head. You guys have been awesome. You've given so much great information and helped each other out. Thank you very much for all of this. Did you have anything else that you wanted to share, Angela?
Nope, I think that's it. Thank you to the panel. Thank you for coming. Hopefully this was helpful for everyone, panelists and audience alike. And if you've got any questions, reach out to, again, one of the panelists or somebody on the screen. And then Sarah, you can wrap us up.
Well, let me do that. Let me say one more time, thank you to this awesome panel. I have thoroughly enjoyed hearing your relationships, your partnerships, your approach. It's been inspiring, especially for this last session of the conference, last concurrent session. This is to be in. And
Sarah, let me jump in.
Yep.
Dawn Hughes, thank you very much, Dawn. Put the link to the office hours in the chat.
Thank you, Dawn.
Again, team effort.
It's awesome to be on a team, and I want to say thank you to everybody who has helped put on this conference, because it's been a great team effort. So thank you very much. Please rate this session and give some feedback that is on the Whova. There we go. I can't imagine anybody putting anything but awesome about this, but thank you very much. Please give us that kind of feedback though, because it's really helpful. Like if you want more sessions like this, it's helpful to know that. We also have the Transitions Academy coming up November 2nd and 3rd. So that helps us think about some of the sessions we're going to do for that as well. Make sure to continue to follow us on social media and check out our exhibitors. one last time before you leave. The good news for you all is all these sessions are recorded. They will all be available to you, plus some on-demand sessions on the conference website. Give us about a week to get all of those up, but those will all be available. So if you want to, you can watch every single session of this conference, and the keynote was fabulous. Yesterday, we had great speakers this morning. So I just encourage you to go back and listen to all those. Otherwise, we have one more session, and that is at 1:30. And so we'll see you all there. But once again, thank you everybody for all that you do in the state. Very good. Thanks everybody for doing this. And thanks for being a part of the Forum for Excellence.